At 75 years old, the man whose face and voice have generated an unprecedented $27 billion at the global box office is quietly walking away from the noise. For over 3 decades, the world has known him as the ultimate, unshakable cinematic force of nature. He is the Jedi Master who wielded a purple lightsaber in the Galactic Republic, the eye-patch-wearing architect who assembled the Avengers, and the Ezekiel-quoting hitman who violently redefined pop culture in the 1990s. His voice alone is a trademarked weapon capable of commanding entire movie theaters into dead, electrifying silence. But today, the loudest and most explosive man in Hollywood is facing a terrifying battle that requires no script, no stunt doubles, and no cameras. Behind the intimidating aura, the designer tracksuits, and the endless list of blockbuster credits lies a fiercely guarded personal life that is currently being shaken to its absolute core. Recent news has broken through the impenetrable walls of his private estate. His wife of over 4 decades, the acclaimed Broadway actress LaTanya Richardson Jackson, is facing a severe and heartbreaking personal health crisis. The man who has spent his entire career saving cinematic universes is now dropping everything to save his own. He is delaying massive studio projects. He is stepping out of the blinding limelight. He is stripping away the heavy Hollywood armor to take on the most grueling, quiet, and important role of his 80-year existence, a caregiver. The public sees a titan of industry taking a well-deserved leave of absence. But the truth hidden behind the closed doors is far more profoundly human. He is not retreating because he is tired of the applause or the massive paychecks. He is retreating because the only audience member who ever truly mattered to his soul is fighting a war, and he refuses to let her fight it alone. In an industry where marriages expire faster than the promotional tours of the movies they star in, their 50-year bond stands as a monolithic anomaly. But to understand the absolute gravity of this twilight sacrifice, one must first look back at the desperate, blood-stained, and poverty-stricken foundation upon which this Hollywood empire was actually built. A king is only as strong as the queen who forged his crown. The year was 1970. Atlanta, Georgia was a boiling crucible of civil rights tension, political unrest, and raw artistic awakening. On the manicured, prestigious grounds of Spelman College, an all-women's institution dedicated to empowering black women, a young, fiercely disciplined theater snob named LaTanya Richardson was dissecting the heavy complexities of stage performance. Across town at the historically black Morehouse College, a rebellious, politically charged young man named Samuel Leroy Jackson was trying to find an outlet for the raging fire in his chest. He was not a star. He was an angry, brilliant student who had recently been expelled for locking college board members in a building during a radical protest. When their paths finally crossed, it was not a fairy tale of immediate, soft, cinematic romance. It was a violent collision of two fiercely independent, stubborn artists who had absolutely nothing but sheer ambition in their pockets. They bonded over the grueling realities of the acting craft. She was a stage purist who believed in the sanctity of the theater. He was a guy obsessed with the visceral visual power of movies. They did not have luxury trust funds or industry connections, but they shared an ironclad vision of the future. By 1980, they stood before a preacher and tied the knot. The wedding itself was a stark reflection of their uneven social standing at the time. LaTanya stood at the altar, backed by 23 bridesmaids, a testament to her deep community roots and vibrant social circle. Samuel stood opposite her with only a handful of friends he had managed to scrape together. He was the underdog in his own love story. The early years of their marriage in the freezing grit of New York City were brutally unforgiving. While LaTanya steadily built a respectable, critically acclaimed career on the stage, Samuel was drowning in the suffocating obscurity of background roles, stand-in work, and security guard shifts at Manhattan Plaza. He was the perpetual understudy. He was the guy holding the spear in the background of the shot. The financial instability was crushing, and the rejection letters piled up faster than the rent money on their kitchen counter. But LaTanya saw something beneath his simmering frustration. She saw a raw, untapped volcanic talent that the theatrical industry was simply too blind to recognize. She became his financial anchor and his emotional backbone, keeping him from completely shattering under the weight of his own deferred dreams. They survived the brutal New York winters on theater wages and the desperate hope that one day the world would catch up to his genius. She did not just marry a struggling man, she married a potential she was absolutely determined to protect. But Hollywood is a ruthless machine that demands a pound of flesh before it grants an ounce of glory. And the price Samuel would soon pay almost destroyed them both. By the late 1980s, the suffocating pressure of unrealized potential finally broke his psyche. Samuel L. Jackson did not step gracefully into the golden glow of Hollywood success. He crawled through the darkest pits of chemical dependency to get there. The man who would eventually become a global symbol of unshakable cool was, in reality, collapsing under a severe crack cocaine and alcohol addiction. He became a toxic ghost in his own home, hiding in the basement, consumed by the pipe, the bottle, and the bitter resentment of a 40-year-old actor who felt his time had run out. The breaking point arrived with brutal cinematic clarity. One afternoon, LaTanya and their 8-year-old daughter Zoe walked into their kitchen to find him passed out cold on the floor, the pathetic remnants of a crack cooking session scattered around his unconscious body. It was the absolute rock bottom of a man who had lost his soul to the streets of New York. In that exact moment, 99% of women in LaTanya's position would have packed their bags, taken their child, and walked out the door forever. The entertainment industry would have forgiven her. The world would have understood her escape. Instead, she stood over the broken body of her husband and made a choice that altered the course of cinematic history. She forced him into a rehabilitation center. She looked him dead in the eye and delivered an ultimatum devoid of any cheap Hollywood melodrama. She told him that she was not going to fix him, but she was going to demand that he fix himself, because God had told her not to leave him in the dirt. She commanded him to get the professional help he needed, adding the chilling caveat that if he wanted to leave the marriage after he got sober, they would discuss it then. She gave him the final chance to become the man he was supposed to be. He listened. 2 weeks after completing his grueling stint in rehab, a newly sober Samuel L. Jackson stepped onto the set of Spike Lee's Jungle Fever to play a crack addict. He channeled every ounce of his recent agony, every physical tremor of withdrawal, and every drop of domestic shame into the performance. The critics were paralyzed by the terrifying authenticity. The Cannes Film Festival had to create a special Best Supporting Actor award just to honor what he had done on screen. It was the violent ignition of a rocket. From there, the ascension was absolute. Pulp Fiction cemented his untouchable legacy. He began commanding $20 million paychecks. His face was plastered on billions of dollars worth of merchandise. He became a one-man industry, a brand of unstoppable swagger. Meanwhile, LaTanya quietly continued her own stellar work, securing Tony Award nominations, directing Broadway plays, and acting in hit television shows, never once allowing herself to be reduced to merely the wife of a superstar. They had survived the fire. They had reached the absolute zenith of global fame, clutching onto each other through the turbulent storms of celebrity culture, media scrutiny, and the exhausting demands of international press tours. They presented a united front, a black Hollywood royalty that proved loyalty could outlast the deadliest temptations. But the golden illusion of permanent invincibility is the greatest lie fame ever tells. The cruelest irony of human existence is that you can conquer the world, amass unimaginable generational wealth, and build a cinematic legacy that will outlive your grandchildren, yet still remain completely powerless against the fragile biology of the human body. Over the past year, the impenetrable fortress of the Jackson family has been quietly breached by a devastating reality. Reports emerged from close family friends and inner circles that LaTanya Richardson Jackson is facing a severe personal health crisis. The exact medical details have been fiercely protected, locked away behind a wall of strict privacy that the couple has maintained for half a century. but the ripple effects of the diagnosis have been impossible to hide from the public eye. The tragedy struck not with a loud explosion, but with a silent, heavy creeping dread that brought the giant of cinema to his knees. For a man who has always been notoriously private and relentlessly hardworking, the pain bleeding into his public schedule was undeniable. Samuel L. Jackson, the legendary workaholic who notoriously churned out 3 to 4 massive blockbusters a single year, suddenly hit the brakes. He began taking extended, unprecedented leaves of absence. He actively delayed high-profile projects. He started turning down the action-heavy, stunt-driven roles that defined his later career. The man who once thrived on the chaotic adrenaline of a movie set traded his heavy scripts for the quiet, grueling responsibilities of a bedside caregiver. Close confidence reported seeing a profound shift in his demeanor. The anxiety and the sheer terror of potentially losing the woman who quite literally saved his life from a crack house floor in the 1980s weighed heavily on his shoulders. This was no longer about managing a career transition. This was about holding the line against the darkest terror a husband can face. The industry, so used to the predictable, cynical cycle of celebrity divorces and superficial scandals, watched in a state of solemn reverence. The public response was an overwhelming tidal wave of empathy. Social media platforms were flooded with prayers, not just from fans who loved his movies, but from millions of people who deeply respected the integrity of their marriage. Hollywood directors, A-list co-stars, and billionaire producers did not pressure him to return to the green screens. Instead, they organized quiet, intimate gatherings at the Jackson household to offer raw emotional support, taking over mundane daily chores just to give the exhausted family a moment to breathe. The church community that had supported them since their rebellious youth in Atlanta rallied around them, surrounding their home with a spiritual shield of prayer. Samuel leaned heavily into his faith, and his daughter Zoe drawing strength from the very family unit he and LaTanya had fought so ruthlessly to protect. He was no longer Samuel L. Jackson, the movie star. He was just the Sam, a terrified husband holding the hand of the only woman who ever truly knew his soul. He didn't step back because he was finished with Hollywood. He stepped back because Hollywood means absolutely nothing when the center of your universe is in pain. As the dust of this current agonizing battle settles into a new quiet reality, the future of Samuel L. Jackson's career remains suspended in a delicate, unpredictable transition. He has not announced a formal retirement to the press, but the trajectory of his life has irreversibly shifted. Industry insiders speculate that when he does return to the arts, he will pivot sharply toward roles that require less physical exertion and more emotional depth. He may retreat behind the camera as a producer alongside his wife, or lend his iconic, booming voice to animated features and documentaries avenues and that allow him to maintain his creative fire while keeping his physical presence exactly where it belongs at home beside LaTanya. They are preparing for a twilight chapter defined not by weekend box office grosses or flashing red carpet premieres, but by the simple, profound luxury of time. Time to sit in the garden. Time to reflect on the 50-year marathon they ran together through the jagged glass of the entertainment business. Time to simply exist, breathing the same air away from the blinding flashbulbs of a world that rapidly consumes its heroes. Their love story is a definitive masterclass in endurance. It is a brutal, beautiful reminder that true romance is not found in printed wedding invitations, manufactured PR stunts, or multi-million-dollar diamond rings. True romance is found on the filthy floor of a crack-stained kitchen in the 1980s. It is found in the sterile, terrifying silence of hospital waiting rooms. It is found in the quiet, desperate prayers whispered in the dead of night when the cameras are turned off. They built a legacy that completely transcends cinema, proving that even in the most toxic, fame-obsessed environment on the planet, absolute loyalty can still survive. They fought the devil of addiction. They navigated the treacherous, ego-inflating waters of unimaginable wealth, and now they are fighting the ultimate, undefeated enemy of time and health. And they are doing it exactly as they always have together, bleeding and surviving as one. He never needed to play a superhero on the silver screen. He just had to be one for her. As we look back at the incredible, turbulent journey of this undisputed Hollywood titan and the brilliant woman who built him from the ground up, we are forced to ask ourselves a deeper question about the media we consume and the idols we worship. Beyond the prop guns, the iconic swearing, and the absolute cinematic dominance, which of Samuel L. Jackson's legendary roles has truly accompanied your own youth and left the deepest mark on your memory. And more importantly, in a modern, cynical era, where love is treated like a highly disposable commodity, do you believe we will ever see a Hollywood survival story as raw, painful, and profoundly beautiful as Samuel and LaTanya's? Again, let us know your deepest thoughts and share your memories in the comments below.